Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this 8-piece puzzle fold card. I'd made a 4-piece a while back and one of my lovely followers, Linda Ziegler, had asked me if I'd ever done an 8-piece and I hadn't, and at the time I said no, but I'll give it a try. And it's over a month now, so Linda, I am sorry it took me a while. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started. So fair warning, there are not only 8s to this, there are also 16ths, and it sounds very pedantic when you've got 15 16ths. Why not just make it a whole inch? But it doesn't fit with the dimensions that we have, so bear with me and I'll explain it. And once you've got them cut, they all fit together quite easily. So the main ingredients, it is the petal pink, and it is 4 1/4 by 9 1/2, and it's scored at 1 and 2 inches and 7 1/2 and 8 1/2. And my advice would be that when you come to fold it, you really need to be particular that you have it to the edge before you score it sharply with the bone folder. In my very original video where I did the 4-piece, I hadn't scored it exactly and it made the middle not join up evenly. So that's my one piece of advice. Sometimes it really just depends where it falls in the trough of the paper cutter, but we'll try our best, and then if needs be, there's, oh, you know, we can always just snip it down a little bit. So that's the main body. There is a piece that goes on the inside, basic white, and that's the usual layer. So it's 5 1/4 by 4, and with a bit of relief, we'll just go and stick that nice, easy measurement in before we get on to the 8ths and the 16ths. So we'll pop that into the middle. So it's got that little piece taken care of. And then we've got a piece of, another piece of the lovely pink, and it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it's basically a full piece. And as you'll know, this is the size that fits into a standard envelope, but we're going to cut this down. And then the designer series paper is just a 1/4 size smaller than that, so it's 5 1/4 by 4. We'll actually end up with a slither of this left at the top, and you'll see why. It's just better to have a little bit extra than not enough. So what I did was I made myself a template out of basic white cardstock. I'll put this on my blog. There'll be a photograph of this on my blog, and there'll also be a photograph of the other side which shows the dimensions of the designer series paper. That's where the 15 16ths come in, but you'll see. So anyway, we'll leave that off to one side while we get this cut. Now, the nice thing about a Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer is it actually breaks down to 16ths, so you don't have to guess. There's actually a little measurement for it. So this being 4 1/4, which is the usual 1/4 sheet of cardstock, cuts in half at 2 1/8. So we'll go ahead and we will line that up and cut that. And then we need to cut it down again. So half of 2 1/8 is 1 1/16. And on the paper trimmer, there is a little notch, and it's just the first little line beyond the 1. So we'll put that into place and we'll cut it in half. And then of course we'll do the same with the other piece that had been 2 1/8. So now we're going to make it 1 1/16. So line it up with the 16th mark and then cut it. So we've now got the 4 pieces all the same. And then what we need to do is trim them down so that they are the staggered edges. So the first one is 1 1/4, which leaves 4 1/4 because that makes 5 1/2. So we'll put it at 1 1/4 and slice that piece off. And I'll just, actually, I'll bring that down and I'll put those up there. And then we need to cut a piece that's 2 3/8. So line it up on the cutter, and it leaves a piece that's 3 1/8. And then the middle two are actually the opposite of each other. So the left-hand side is going to be 3 1/8 and leave 2 3/8, just so you've got that stepped look. And then the piece at the bottom is 4 1/4 to the left, which leaves 1 1/4 to the right. So like I say, there's quite a bit of cutting. I would say fussy cutting, but of course that's when you go around shapes and flowers and things with your scissors. Complicated cutting, but if we follow the guide, it's not so difficult. The 16ths tend to come in more on the horizontal lines, and then the vertical lines tend to be just 8s and 1/4. So now we're going to turn it over and make a start with the designer series paper. So it's 5 1/4 by 4, and what we need to do is we need to cut the top. Well, we need to cut it into 4 5/16 pieces. So now 15/16. So just under the one there is a little line, and we're going to line this up with that and cut it, and it will be 15/16. And then we're going to move it over again just to that one little tick under the 1 inch mark, and it will be 15/16. And we'll do that 2 more times. And like I said, we do have a little bit left over, but it's better to have a little extra than not enough. So let me just make sure that's actually on the 16th. Having just made a big fuss about it fitting. And then we've got a little piece left, which you could pop into the inside. Depends really on the pattern of your designer series paper. On the one I made, there was a little bit more floweriness to it. So these are the pieces cut across. And then what we need to do is cut them down, the same as we did with the cardstock pieces. So we need it to be 1 1/8. So line it up at 1 1/8 and trim that off. And then that can just go on the cardstock it's going to be layered onto. The next one is going to be 2 1/4. So lining it up at 2 1/4 and layer that on. The next one is 3. And then the last one, it's 4 1/8 to the left, which leaves 1 1/8 to the right. So we'll line it up at 4 1/8. Like I say, that's an awful lot of 8s and 16ths and sort of fussy measurements, but I do think the card, when it comes out at the end, is quite worth it. So that's all the cutting for now. So you can sit back and go, oh, thank goodness for that. So now all we have to do is the assembling. So we will bring in the body of the card, and we are going to put the designer series paper onto the layer of each of its little places with just a tiny little border around. But again, we're trying to keep it in place. And what I'm actually going to do is turn this over and put these back on like home plate, as it were. It just helps to keep it gathered together. So if you wanted to make yourself a template or copy it sort of live size, I guess you would call it, you could do that, and then you can put your pieces back on to make sure that you've got them held in the right place, because we're actually trying to follow the pattern of the designer series paper as it goes through. So get all these pieces stuck on. It is a little bit of a challenge, but it does go in the end. This is nice if you've got sort of a whole patterned paper, or especially the lovely new ones like Thoughtful Journey that has a vista. It has like a whole mountain range or something like that. Okie doke. There we go, got it all on. And it's ready to go in place. So now what we have to do is we have to bring back in the base, and on the two outer 1 inch areas, we're going to put adhesive all the way down. Because there's not a layer, we don't have to worry. It's actually going to stick the full length of this 1 inch piece. So starting at the bottom, we're going to line that up with the corner and the edge of the cardstock, and then the next right hand piece again is going to line up, and then the next one, and then lastly the top piece, and they all line up with each other. And then what we need to do is actually close that side. Oh, you know what? I think this one isn't to the edge. So let me just gently ease that off and make sure it's right to the edge. Otherwise, you lose the flow of your pieces. And then what we're going to do is stick these on. So what we have to do is we have to make sure we've butted it up against that edge. And bring it all the way over. It's hard to do this without getting my head in a shot, I must be honest. You know, when it's just me at home, I can stick my big noggin in the way, but I really don't want to do that if I can help it. And then the next one, you're going to butt it up against the piece. Make sure it's lined up in the middle. And then the next one, the same deal. Make sure it butts up against the one below it. And then last but not least, we'll pop the top one on. And there you have it, a nice 8-bar pattern. And then all we need to do next is to, stamp the greeting. So I cut a banner out of the Stylish Shapes dies, and I'm actually going to be using the new Simply Said and get the thinking of you out of it. Pop it onto an acrylic block. Stamp it with the crushed curry because that's the colour that the middle of the flower is, that yellow. So we can stamp that on there. And then because these are quite sort of free-flowing, if we put the greeting, if we put the point of the banner where these two meet, it helps hold that top one in place. So I'm just going to pop some adhesive on the back of there. Stick that on, and there you have it. So 8-bar gatefold. There's the template which will be on my blog. All the directions and dimensions will be on my blog. There'll be the picture of the cardstock and a picture of the designer series paper template, even with its horrible 16ths. If you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. I always like thumbs up. Pop a comment or a question in the box below. That's actually where Linda passed the comment about the 4-piece puzzle card, which inspired me to do this. So thank you so much, Linda. If you've got a card you'd like me to try or to adapt, there's cards I've seen in the past where they've been 6x6 and they're a little bit larger, and I've broken them down to be a standard 5.5 by 4.25. I'm up to the challenge. So, you know, if you've got anything like that you want to say. And last but not least, thanks so much for watching.